For a moment, it looked like Israel Adesanya might be about to shut a lot of people up. He looked sharp early, he was reading the fight well, and you could feel that little bit of belief coming back. Like maybe this was the night he reminded everyone who he is.
My freestylers, thank you so much for holding me down.
But then it all flipped. Joe Pyfer took over, got him down, started landing hard, and the whole thing went from controlled to chaotic fast.
By TKO, Joe Body Bags Pyfer!
Now the big debate after the fight is not whether Pyfer deserved the win. He absolutely did. The question is whether Izzy gave that fight away by fighting the wrong fight, because Daniel Cormier thinks that's exactly what happened. DC's take was pretty simple. He said Adesanya was doing good work, especially early, but then for some reason he decided to stand in the middle and trade in a way that gave Pyfer exactly the kind of opening he needed. And honestly, that's what made the result feel so frustrating if you were backing Izzy, because it didn't feel like a case of him getting completely outclassed from the first second. It felt like he had a path and then stepped away from it. Welcome back to the Rear Naked Choke. No fluff, no filler, just straight to the point UFC news. And if you're enjoying the video, a quick like helps push it out to more MMA fans. Now, since that loss, Izzy has spoken out, but not really in the way some people were expecting. He didn't break down the fight in detail, he didn't go into excuses, he didn't point fingers. He just posted a short message saying he knows it's hard for his people seeing him fall, but that it's even harder on him. And then basically said he'll respawn and go again. That's very Izzy. Still composed, still proud, still trying to show people he's not finished. But whether fans believe that is another thing, because this wasn't just another loss. This felt like one of those nights where people start asking bigger questions, not just what went wrong, but how much is really left. And that's why Francis Ngannou's reaction hit a bit differently too. Francis said he was heartbroken watching the fight because Izzy actually looked sharp. He said after the first round he felt good about where things were going, and then the sport just reminded everybody how cruel it can be. That's probably the best way to put it. This sport can make you look great right up until the moment it doesn't, and once momentum turns, it turns fast. Now moving to another fighter who had to address a rough night, Maycee Barber. She released a video after her loss to Alexa Grasso, and honestly, it was one of those clips where you can tell she's still piecing things together. She said she doesn't remember much from the fight, and every time she opens social media, she sees herself laid out in the octagon, which obviously is not the easiest thing to deal with. But what stood out was that she still called it one of the better nights of her life, just because of the opportunity, the moment, and what it meant to be there. That says a lot about fighters. Most people would only see the knockout and the embarrassment of it. Fighters still see the privilege in being there at all. She said she'll heal up, put the work in, and come back. And to be fair, that's really all you can do after a loss like that. Now let's talk about someone who sounds like he might be drifting further and further away from the UFC, Colby Covington. Because after RAF this weekend, he's sounding a lot more committed to Real American Freestyle than he is to fighting in the octagon. He said he's all in on RAF, that he's invested his own money into it, and that wrestling was his first love anyway. And when he talks now, it doesn't sound like a guy who's waiting patiently on the UFC phone call. It sounds like somebody who's already mentally halfway out the door. That said, the weird part is it still sounds like he may have one more UFC fight lined up. Arman Tsarukyan hinted that Colby already has a date and an opponent, which makes this whole thing a bit strange. Because now you've got Colby publicly talking like RAF is the future, while at the same time there are still signs the UFC might be using him one more time. So maybe the UFC chapter isn't fully closed just yet, but either way, Colby is clearly trying to keep himself relevant through the chaos. Now on the topic of Arman, it sounds like he's not slowing down at all. There was talk that after RAF he could be heading into another grappling match pretty quickly, this time against Dylan Dennis under Hype FC rules in Brazil. That post apparently went up, then got deleted, so right now it's a bit messy and nothing feels fully locked in, but Arman himself keeps making it sound like he'll be back in the UFC this summer. And in his words, for a belt, any belt. He even mentioned the BMF belt as something he'd take seriously. And that's interesting because it tells you where his head is at right now. He doesn't want a tune-up fight, he doesn't want to sit out, he wants something that matters. Now whether the UFC gives him that is another story. Let's switch gears, because one of the more interesting bits of actual roster movement came from outside the spotlight a little. Abubakar Vagaev is reportedly UFC bound. He announced that he's signed with the promotion, gave Credit to Khamzat Chimaev for helping make it happen and officially close the chapter on his ACA run. That's a good addition for the UFC. He's experienced, he's beaten solid names, and he's not coming in as some random developmental prospect. He's coming in as a guy who expects to make noise. And speaking of guys getting ready for summer, Umar Nurmagomedov has been hinting at a return too. He posted that he's getting ready for summer, and the footage coming out from camp makes it look like he's very much gearing up for something, which leads to the obvious question: if Merab doesn't want to wait forever, do we eventually get Umar again as a #1 contender type fight? That wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, one of the more bizarre stories from outside the UFC came from Yoel Romero. He lost a bare-knuckle fight in Russia by decision, but the reaction was so negative that the promotion is now reviewing the result. That almost never happens unless the backlash is serious. And Romero himself came out and basically said nobody was happy with the decision except his opponent and the opponent's team. So now there's an official review happening, and we'll see whether that result actually stands. And honestly, even at this stage of his career, Yoel still finds a way to be involved in weird, dramatic fight stories. That's just kind of his thing. Another rough night went to Brian Battle, who lost in his PFL appearance after getting submitted in the opening round. That was his first MMA fight since leaving the UFC, and it definitely wasn't the kind of start he would have wanted. Whenever fighters leave the UFC and go elsewhere, there's always that pressure to prove they still belong at a high level, so when it goes wrong straight away, people notice. And finally, probably the strangest clip in the whole transcript, Jon Jones breaking up a brawl while filming that Russian reality show he's involved with. Two fighters started throwing hands right next to him during a face-off, and Jones had to step in and separate it. It was one of those clips that feels funny because it's Jon Jones of all people playing peacemaker, but at the same time, he handled it calmly and somehow came out of it without getting clipped, which, considering how stupid those situations can get, is probably the real win there. So right now, you've got Izzy trying to figure out where he stands after another brutal setback. Maycee Barber taking the hard road back after a nasty loss. Colby sounding more committed to RAF than the UFC. Arman still circling title-level opportunities. New names arriving in the UFC. And Yoel Romero somehow still at the center of scoring drama. That's a pretty wild stretch of stories. Let me know in the comments what stands out most to you. Did Izzy lose that fight because he made the wrong read? Or is this just who he is now? And do you think Colby actually fights in the UFC again, or is he done with that chapter? And if you want more straight-to-the-point MMA news, make sure you subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one.